all the freaking all the sweat on my glass.
What is up, YouTube? It is your favorite pseudo gun expert and YouTube certified gunsmith, the uncouth truth. I got a topic that I want to bring to you today, and we are going to discuss how short is too short for 5.56. So I'm going to get into some numbers and figures and things like that, but I really don't want anyone to pigeonhole me to anything because a lot of this data really depends on load type and projectile type. You know, a lot of different variables are involved. But I kind of want to give you a baseline of what you need to think about if you're building something super short, and especially if you plan on using it defensively. So I want to talk about a gun that I did a while back. This right here is it's an 8.1 inch pistol build that I did, and I've actually had this gun for a while. It's a Cold Hammer Forge 8.1 inch that I believe was branded Spikes Tactical, but manufactured by FN. And this right here is Aero Precision upper and lower, and a Law Tactical folding stock adapter, which I really like because it folds. I can shove this fucker anywhere. You can actually probably put it in your prison purse if you're brave enough. I haven't tried yet. Who knows? We'll see. But anyways, now I built this more or less for fucking off at the range and wasting copious amounts of ammo. Not so much defensively, and I'm going to explain why. We're going to discuss a little bit about ballistics here in just a second. But this thing is a hell of a lot of fun to shoot, and it makes a ginormous fucking fireball at the end of it. It is loud as shit. But as a matter of fact, when I was shooting it, it was actually, the shock wave was pulling the sweat onto my glasses, so I couldn't see anything with it. But anyway, let's discuss ballistics and what it is that you need to consider whenever you're building something for a defensive rifle, especially something really short. So there are more or less two topics that you need to understand when it comes to terminal ballistics, and that's going to be cavitation, and that's also going to be fragmentation. Now I'm going to talk about those two separately, even though they're very closely linked, and I'm going to explain why. Now first, let's discuss fragmentation. Fragmentation, as you I'm sure gather, is when the bullet fragments and starts to come apart. Now it is universally agreed upon that right around 2,700 feet per second is generally when a projectile will start to fragment. And when it does this, a lot of that energy is more efficiently transferred into whatever target it is that you're shooting. Lawfully, I might add. All right, so cavitation is a little bit different in that if you ever watch some of those gel block tests, whenever you have the projectile moving through, it'll go in a few inches and you'll notice a more or less a balloon. As the bullet goes in, it'll start to yaw and twist and turn. Matter of fact, what the fuck is that weirdo's name? Beto O'Rourke. Probably the only thing he said in his entire campaign that was actually accurate was that, you know, the AR-15 bullet, it enters the body and just fucks up everything. That's exactly right. It sure does, which is why I bought one, because ideally what you're looking for is immediate incapacitation of whatever kind of threat to you. You want to stop it as quickly as possible. Now, in order to achieve that, your bullet needs to be reaching a minimum speed of about 2,400 feet per second. Now, I say that, but that's the general consensus. Now, that's not saying that you get hit with a slug doing, you know, 2,300 feet per second, that it ain't going to fuck up your day, because it absolutely will. And in all likelihood, probably going to kill your ass immediately, depending on where you get shot. But from all the research and data that have been done over the years, ever since basically the short barreled AR has been invented, they've pretty much decided that 2,400 is a minimum defensive speed that you need for that, or minimum velocity that you need for that kind of impact for that cavitation to occur, and thusly immediate incapacitation of the target. I know that's a big ass mouthful, excuse me. Now, bullet load types, there's a million of them out there. There really is. So what if you're looking at a defensive round for your short barreled rifle? Well, what are some considerations? One, I would say you probably should go with the XM193 or a 55 grain round. And I'm going to explain why. The heavier rounds, like a 77 grain, you know, Sierra Match King, or, you know, 855, whatever, those are heavier rounds, and also they tend not to peel as much. So they, even though they perform in some cases a little bit better than a 55 grain will, at higher speeds out of a 18 or 20-inch rifle, they're not necessarily going to do as well out of a SBR, and that's because XM193, typically speaking, will move about 100 to 200 feet per second faster, and you really need that extra speed whenever it's coming onto the target out of an SBR, because it may not make a whole lot of difference from a 20-inch barrel to an 18-inch barrel. But if you're talking about a 12.5-inch barrel to an 11 point or a 10.3, or even an 11.5, it's going to make a lot of difference. So what kind of speeds are we looking at? Out of it, typically, and again, this all depends on load type, so don't rake me over the fucking coals here, all right? Saying, oh, that's incorrect. Maybe you're right, but generally speaking, a 12.5-inch barrel is going to produce a speed of a 55 grain bullet of about 2,800 feet per second. 11.5-inch barrel is generally about 100 feet per second slower, and then I would say the bare bones minimum barrel length for a defensive firearm is probably going to be the 10.3, which lobs them out at a little over 2,500 feet per second, more or less 26. Somewhere in that neighborhood is what you can expect from a standard 55 grain ammunition. Anything shorter than that, it's just not going to produce enough. And to explain why, a lot of this data, what they'll do is they'll take the chronograph, they'll stick the gun right in front of it, and these are the speeds measured essentially right out of the barrel. Now, once that projectile enters the barrel or exits the barrel and hits the air, the drag on that bullet is going to be pretty significant, and you're going to have a lot of loss there. And that is something that you need to consider when you're building something short. That's why I say that a 10.3 Mark 18 is the absolute minimum as far as terminal ballistics for stopping the threat anyway. Different load types, though, they do have some types of loads, especially like plastic tips or as a hollow point. You'll see, you'll notice in the nose of the bullet that there's basically a hollowed out cone. Those do assist with fragmentation, and actually that means that they will split up and break up at a slower speed. So that is also something that you need to consider. Hornady tap is actually one of my favorites. For this purpose, I use that defensively in some of my longer guns, like my 16-inch builds. If I'm planning on using something for a shit hits the fan type of gun, I'll definitely have that chambered in there. But I guess to each their own. It really doesn't. It really is up to you and the kind of research that you do. Now, if you have any questions as far as what type of range I can get out of these, I can't really give a direct answer because, again, there's so many different variables that come in with load types. But generally speaking, and I was singing the 12.5 inches praises in a previous video that I did, and I'm still sticking with that. I'm going to say that 12.5 inch for SBR type weapons is probably going to be your best bet. And the reality is it only gets better the more length that you put on there. So a 13.7, you're not going to convince me that it's not better than a 12.5, because it is, as well as a 4 and so on, all the way up the chain, because the longer that barrel is, the faster that bullet is traveling, and the better ballistics that you're going to get out of it. So just understand that whenever you're building something super duper short, don't be expecting to engage with a Mark 18 a target that's out at the 150 to 200 in it to have the same kind of impact that it's going to have if you're shooting a 14.7 or 12.5, because it really does get reduced from the shorter and shorter you go. It gets exponentially less effective. Not to say that it's not effective at all. I feel like I keep going back and forth here with trying to contradict myself, but I apologize about that. Anyway, the short guns are a hell of a lot of fun to shoot, and I know that most people build those just because they really like the maneuverability, but understand that you are really robbing that bullet of its effectiveness whenever you start reducing the speed and getting to around 10.3 inches. Okay, so that's something that you need to keep in the back of your head. Anyway, if you have any other questions or anything like that, I'd be more than happy to get back with you. And especially if you happen to be out there and you own a chronograph, maybe a couple of different barrel lengths, and you want to tell me your experiences with them, I am always open to information. So by all means, let me know. So I am curious. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and y'all take it easy.